it's like all of a sudden quit somehow equals failure. And it's like, no, it just means you're done. And it may just mean you're done for now.
Winners never quit, and quitters never win.
Quitters win all the time. Let us show you how on Quit Happens.
Hey everyone, Lynn Marie here. Before we get started, just wanted to let you know where you can find out more about strategic quitting. You can find me on the web at quittingbydesign.com, or you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Quitting by Design. Now, today's guest is very interesting. Her name is Elsye Walker. Her trail name is Chardonnay. And the way you get a trail name is that Chardonnay is something called a through hiker, which is a hiker who hikes not just like you and I might hike or like the most in shape person you know might hike, but she hikes like from Mexico to Canada. She has done the Pacific Crest Trail and some other trails. I will let her tell you all about that. Thousands of miles she has hiked, and her quit is hiking related, but I think it will very much apply to many of my listeners who are really into different athletic endeavors, and they may be training for something and the training might just not be going well, and you're thinking like, is this something I need to keep pushing against, or maybe is this just not the time to do this event? So if that is you, or if you just want to hear a great story, please stay tuned for Elsye Chardonnay Walker. Without further ado, here she is. Hey everyone, Lynn Marie here. Thank you so much for joining us today on the next episode of Quit Happens. Today we have my friend, Elsye Chardonnay Walker. I'm going to call you on your Facebook it says it like that, and that's what I always think of you as, Elsye Walker, who I've known Elsye for years. I know her by Chardonnay, but so you might hear me use those interchangeably. But she has a very cool, very unique quit, but it has so many elements that are in common with many of the quits that we face on a day-to-day. Most people will never face the type of quit that Chardonnay faced. And it makes for a great story, but like I said, so many of the fears that she had and the societal pressures and all those kinds of things are the same you would face if you were quitting a job or a relationship. So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So a little background about how Chardonnay and I know each other. I met you, I think, in 2013 or 14. And at the time, I was dating somebody and you called him to ask for backpack advice. And I remember this so clearly because you were going to just take a wilderness course, I believe.
Correct. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Is that what started this all?
That is kind of what started all. I mean, I started, initially I wanted to hike the Camino to Santiago in Spain. But then when I found out about the Pacific Crest Trail right here in California, I was like, I might as well just do that.
Yeah,
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, if you could explain what the Pacific Crest Trail is, how long it is.
The Pacific Crest Trail is 2,660 miles from Mexico to Canada, and it goes through Colorado, Oregon, and Washington.
Okay, and California.
In California. The biggest one.
A little bit more. Yeah. Gotcha. And you did that. That was your first major hike.
Yes.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you somehow went from what backpack do I get to Pacific Crest Trail in like 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, when I took that wilderness basic course, I really liked hiking and I really liked camping. And I thought, wow, if I did the Pacific Crest Trail for like 5 months, you get to do this every night. It was a little bit different
I can
than
imagine.
regular camping, but so I was excited to get out there and try it. And I've always tried different weird things. Why not? I at least give it a try. So I thought it would be a fun experience.
And was it?
It was. I mean, it was the hardest physically, emotionally, mentally thing I've ever done. But it was fun and it was enlightening. I met so many different people from all over the world, and it's just it teaches you how strong you are.
I bet. So where'd you go from there? You completed the Pacific Crest Trail, or the PCT as we'll probably call it from here on in. What'd you do next?
My next, actually when I finished the PCT, my feet hurt so bad, I was like, I'm not doing this ever again. And then while I was on the PCT, other people had told me about the Appalachian Trail, which I didn't even know the Appalachian Trail or the Continental Divide Trail existed when I started.
Wow.
And when I found like a bunch of my friends who had hiked the PCT were also going to do the Appalachian Trail, I was like, I'm going to do it too. So that next year, I went out to hike the Appalachian Trail, which goes from Georgia to Maine. and it's 2,000 miles.
Okay. Now, this is where we'll stop, and we'll explain that somewhere in here you probably learned about the Triple Crown.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, which is?
And the Triple Crown is when you hike all 3 long-distance trails, the PCT, the AT, and the CDT, which is the Continental Divide that goes from Mexico to Canada, through Mexico, New Mexico, Colorado, Idaho, and Montana, and Wyoming.
Got it. Wow. Okay. So yes, Pacific Crest Trail, Continental Divide Trail, and the Appalachian Trail. That would have been the Triple Crown.
Correct.
And you would be on pace to be the first African-American woman to do this, correct?
Correct.
How did you find, you just Googled out and find that?
It was actually something we started talking about when we were on the PCT, and there was a guy who was from Turkey that I hiked with for a while, and he kept saying he was going to be the first Turkish-American person to finish the PCT, and we kept joking about it. And he mentioned, you're probably the first African-American, because there's not a lot of African-Americans out there. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And it wasn't until later I was like, well, could that possibly be true? And when I they don't actually keep an official record, but actually there is no record of anybody else finishing all 3. So
wow, who keeps track of these? American Hiking Association or something?
It's actually the American Long Distance Hiking Association.
All right, okay, very cool. So knowing that you were starting the Appalachian Trail with the Triple Crown in mind.
Mm-hmm.
How did that hike go?
It went okay. It's a different trail. And I think that was part of my thing. I went into it with a lot of ideas of it was going to be like the PCT. It was going to be the same fun and the same people and the same kind of experience. And the thing is, it's totally different. It's totally different. It's the trail where a lot of people do that trail first. So there's a lot of first timers on there. Like 3,000 to 4,000 people start out hiking that trail every year.
Wow.
So there's a lot of people, a lot more than you see on the Pacific Crest Trail.
Gotcha.
So there was that aspect, which I'm not a big fan of. I kind of like the isolation. I kind of like the loner part of being out there in the woods by yourself. And there'd be times when you get to a shelter and there's like 20 people or,
Yeah.
And so it was way different than I was used to it. And I did meet some really cool people and I had a lot of fun because it's more of a social trail where people party and carry on. And it just wasn't my thing. It wasn't my thing.
Gotcha. So what we're leading up to is that you end up quitting the Appalachian Trail at some point.
Correct.
Let's back up a little bit before then. When was the first inkling you got that you may not want to finish this trail at this time?
It was early on because I was hiking with a group, and we had a really good group, but we stopped in town. Everybody wanted to stop in town. We all got rooms, hotel rooms. We had a great time, party in town. And like the next day, I'm like up. I'm ready to go, packed almost up, ready to go. And everybody else is kind of like hungover from the night before. They want to stay another night. And I went off, I was like, well, I'm going to go on. So I went on by myself. So I spent a lot of time on trail, like getting with the group and then leaving a group and getting with group and then leaving, and so it was like, you're always trying to find your people or your crew. And I never really had that like I had on the PCT. So that kind of changed. It just didn't make me, I wasn't having fun. I was not having fun. And then it's just totally different. I mean, the trail is different. And it was to be closed in out there where you are. There's not the grand vistas of the PCT, and I was like, this is everything that I really don't like.
Oh. So what was your thought process from there?
Kind of like the PCT. When you're on the PCT, you get this desire in you to get to Canada at all costs. I'm going to finish. And so when I was on AT, I tried to have that same feeling. I've got to get to Katahdin. I've got to get to the mountain. I've got to get to the end. And I kept pushing. And I also had, friends and family who were, sending me great comments and packages and encouraging me. So even though there was days when I was like, I really don't want to do this, I just kept going, for everybody else.
Yeah.
I just kept going. And it wasn't until I actually did something that I usually don't do on trail, is I got off trail at one point and I went home to Michigan.
Oh.
My niece was graduating and my nephew was in the hospital, so I went home for a couple weeks, and that didn't help.
I bet.
And then I was like, okay, my niece was going to Georgetown, so when they took her back out to school, I had them drop me off back on the trail. I'm going to do it this time. But I was still in that same headspace because now, there's not a lot of people around anymore. Everybody's spread out, and I'm still trying to find people, still trying to meet people. Pennsylvania was rocky, and it's wet, and it's like, oh. I'm like, really? So I was kind of just like, after going home, that really planted a seed in me that I don't really have to be here.
Yeah.
So I kept going until I got to Massachusetts, was when I really decided that I didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do it anymore.
And who did you talk to at that point, if anyone?
Everybody.
If everyone.
I called my mom and talked to her. Of course, she's worried about me, so she was totally down. She was like, you can come home.
Nice.
And I'm like, okay, I need more.
Yeah. Slightly less biased opinion.
Mm-hmm. So I called my sister, and she was encouraging. And then actually I called my friend, and I was like, I really feel like I'm done. I really want to come home. And he asked me the 3 questions. Did you eat? And I'm like, yep, I ate. Did you sleep good last night? Yeah, I slept good last night. Actually, I stayed in the church, and I got a shower, and I'm feeling good. Okay, then. If you're not tired, you're not injured, and you ate, and you feel good, come on home.
Aw. Is this Pat Hall?
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Pat. Hey, Pat. The one who first helped you with the backpacks.
Mm-hmm. So it was like, So I was like, okay, then. That's true. I'm feeling good. I didn't feel bad. I mean, I had those feelings in my pit of my stomach, like when I get home, everybody's going to ask why I quit.
Yeah.
So that was probably my biggest thing. Personally, I wasn't feeling fine with it. But in my gut, I was like, oh, I have to explain. And I have a blog. I have to explain to everybody why I stopped.
Yeah.
And so I was like, so that was a lot of my tearing back and forth, like, maybe I should just keep going. And maybe, people are going to think I quit. And that the PCT was just a fluke. And, so those things just kept going through my head the whole time.
Yeah. And how much had you already completed versus how much you had left?
I had completed 1,500 miles and had 600 miles left.
Wow. 1,500 miles.
Yeah.
Just so the listeners know, because I just learned this, I'm not familiar with how hiking works. So you can come back to this trail, restart from where you stopped, correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So those 1,500 miles aren't lost.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But there was the issue of the fact that your timeline for the Triple Crown was going to be changed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that was in my head too. It's like, well, now I'm not going to get it in that 3 years, because I had even had people go, oh my gosh, you're going for the Triple Crown in 3 years. That's amazing. You're badass. And I'm like, if I stop now, maybe I'm not badass.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of those things that kept running through my head when I, was deciding, basically. And that was the biggest thing. It wasn't me. It was what I thought everybody else was going to feel like about it.
And at the end of the day, was that realization what helped you overcome?
Yeah, that was probably the biggest thing, because it was like, in the end, I'm the one that has to walk the miles.
Yes.
I'm the one that has to get there. I'm the one that has to feel good about it when I get there. At the end, if I never hike again, it's for me.
Right.
And that's why I started all this, was for me, not for anything else or anybody else. So that was the thing. It has to be for me.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said before, it has to be fun. This is not your job.
Right. That's why I went.
Yeah. For fun. And not that it wouldn't possibly lead to job opportunities later, but,
Mm-hmm.
At that time, it was like your passion. And if you're not passionate about your passion at the time.
It is. And you read about it a lot, which is another thing. Because there's so much pressure on people to finish the through hike, a lot of people will write stories or their blogs about how, I hiked 500 miles of the PCT and I quit, and here's why. And it's a lot of people, I think, feel like they have to explain why they quit. Even though it's their own personal journey, it's their own experience. It's a lot of people feel like, here's why I have to explain.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's you shouldn't really have to explain.
Yeah. I think the one thing with the explaining, the flip side could be that people like you who are thinking about quitting, say you were out there and you Googled some quitting the Appalachian Trail and you saw like, hey, I'm not the only person that's ever felt like this.
Yeah.
Maybe if they feel that they have to do it, that's unfortunate. But like the silver lining or beneficial effect is that other people who may be in that are like, oh, I'm not the only one who's ever quit this trail. There's some legit reasons to quit this trail.
And I always went to her, I was like, you did 500 miles. And you were done. That's good. That's still like freaking amazing.
Yeah, how many of us hike 500 miles ever?
So you were done. You were just done.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's that thing about the word quit. It's like all of a sudden quit somehow equals failure, and it's like, no, it just means you're done, and it may just mean you're done for now.
I wish I could just put that. That's just gonna be the quote of the broadcast. It doesn't mean a failure. It just means you're done for now. I love it. So good, Chardonnay. Because I always say most quits, like 90% of quits, are reversible.
You can always go back.
Yeah. I mean, you can get a divorce and remarry the same person.
Hey.
You can do lots of things. You can quit playing the flute and pick up the flute. But
maybe it's just not for you right now.
Exactly. And with what you were doing, which is a physically demanding thing. Like I remember on the PCT, I recall, I think you had a sprained ankle at some point, right? So these are not without physical wear and tear and injuries. And just from my own life, I remember very, very distinctly the day I tore my ACL. I was in the middle of capoeira class. I wasn't playing against anybody, as you would expect, like when you have a capoeira-related injury. Capoeira, for those who don't know, is a Brazilian martial art. But I was doing a solo by myself. It's a part of capoeira where you just like show off some acrobatic moves. And I had done a ton of acrobatic moves in a row. And my teacher at the time said, what else do you have? And the way he said it was just kind of like, I don't care, whatever. Like you would just impress me with like, do something more. And I remember just being so angry and so like dispassionate in that moment about something that I loved, but I was just so like, and I threw one more move and I landed and I tore my ACL. And I've always thought that was like life smacking me in the face. Like if you're doing something for somebody else, oh, well, just in case you wondered, we record this at my house. But if you're doing something under pressure from someone else and not because it's your own passion, I just think the whole energy changes and you are so much more susceptible to injury, illness, whatever else. Gotcha. So at this point, you've got the support of everybody and you end up coming home. But then what comes home? What happens after you come home?
After I got home, I did go through that period where, everybody wants to know why you're home.
Yeah.
I've got to tell everybody why I didn't want to hike it anymore. Plus, on top of that, you have that post-trail depression that you have to deal with that, a lot of people don't really talk about. Coming back, you're back set in the city, and you're gone from being quiet or having your freedom to do whatever to, I've got to get a job and I've got to get an apartment. And so all those things on top of, did I quit? And was it the right decision? Was, a lot to sit with.
Yeah.
When I returned.
How did you get through that?
Hiking.
Yeah, I love it.
It's like, I can, I could go out and hike and have fun.
Yeah.
Here and just get my head straight. I mean, because it's a lot of what, for me, hiking is. It's that time to get your head straight and think through things. And so I did a lot of hiking, solo trips and day trips mostly, just to figure out where my head was.
Yeah.
And also planning the next adventure. All of a sudden it's like on the flight back, I'm like, well, let's look up the Continental Divide and when can I start that one and when can I leave for that one? So it's like on to the next thing,
Yeah. I love it. Now, you told me that, you come home and then you see somebody else who has completed the Appalachian Trail. Tell me about that.
There was another girl who finished the Appalachian Trail that year. She was actually on trail, and we had actually messaged each other a bit on like I think Instagram or something. We'd seen each other, and I never got to meet her. There's another African American woman, and so that was a sad thing. I never got to catch up with her and hike with her or whatever. But that year, she completed it, and I was really excited for her to finish the trail. Then later, it was like, oh. So she finished, and then there's an article I come across online that says, the first African-American woman to complete the Appalachian Trail. And I'm like, oh, aw. It was like, oh, so I was like, I missed that one.
Yeah.
So it was like it was another one of those kicks where it's like, did I make the right decision? Should I have quit? That second guessing of yourself. But it's that thing where it's like, it wasn't right for me right then. So that wasn't meant for me.
Right.
So that's it. So, I had to, again, sit with that's fine. That wasn't my time. It wasn't my thing. So,
Yeah. And it also, I think you said it wasn't your goal. Like, she's a writer.
She was doing her thing. And I have to, say, wow. She plugged it out and she did the whole thing.
And she got a book deal, but you're saying like that's not what you were.
Yeah, and it wasn't for me. That wasn't my thing. Initially, a lot of blogs and Instagram and people right now, that's all it is on the internet. If it's not on the internet, you didn't do it.
Right. And
so that was a big thing for me for a while. There, I was like, oh, people are gonna recognize that I did it, at the time, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but then it was like, that's not, again, why I started it.
Right.
So a lot of it had to go back to, well, why did I start hiking in the beginning? For the enjoyment, not for popularity, not for, a ticker tape parade. It was for me.
Yeah.
So if it's for me, then it's what I want to do. My choice and in my time.
Super powerful. Yeah, absolutely. Especially in your time. Like, I started capoeira multiple times before I actually stuck with it. And I quit multiple times too. Sometimes it's not the right time. And I feel that. And forcing something.
Forcing something is not easy. And then sometimes it's just not fun.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's weird too, because like when I was on the PCT, I forced it, It was like I was getting there no matter what. But I wanted it. I wanted that. And, on the AT, I just didn't want it right then.
Yeah.
And you have to want it or or it's not fun.
Yeah. Great. This is such an interesting story. It is. It's such a, Chardonnay, I think you were listening to the podcast and then you wrote to me about this and I was thrilled because it's something I would never even think of.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think for me, it's been just a thing this year too, with the decision to go back and the decision of reading other people's stories about quitting, or why they quit. So it's like, it's not, a lot of people are celebrated for finishing, oh, you did the whole thing and you're a thru hiker. But I think those people who quit also deserve some, pats on the back for even just starting, that's the big thing. You started. You went out there and you were only out for a couple days. You started. And so quitting is not bad. You did what you had to do and you were done.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I love it. So as she just mentioned, she's going to be doing it again, picking back up in May of this year.
Right.
Where can people follow your journey? Just because I wanted to add to the amount of people who are going to add pressure to any future decisions you have.
I'm ready now. I'm actually at wanderingchardonnay.com.
Very cool. Very cool.
On Instagram on ELSYEW.
Okay. Love it. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Certainly. Thanks a lot.
Super delightful. All right. For everyone else out there, until next time, happy quitting.